The sun rises on the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and as the Porsche iRacing Cup heads to Canada for the second of 5 qualifying races, for 20 drivers, an opportunity to make it to the world's biggest stage. Just 3 weeks ago, Sebastian Job clinched the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup at the historic Monza circuit, but already the chasing pack looks forward to dethroning the reigning champion. 20 grid slots are available for next year's edition of the Porsche Esports Super Cup, and with the season opener mere weeks away on January the 9th, 4 more races lie between drivers and a World Championship opportunity. Hello and welcome to RaceSpot TV for coverage of the Porsche iRacing Cup and the second of 5 Super Session races as we look to determine who will be fighting for their share of $200,000. My name is Arjuna Kankipadi and I'm joined for this one by part of the broadcast team for the Super Cup, the one and only Paul Smith. And Paul, a quick turnaround between seasons for the competitors, and that means a shorter qualifying series than normal, down from 12 to just 5 rounds, and that means each race is crucial to get the best results possible to try and lock yourself in to the championship hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to this broadcast. And it really is going to be an intense series, is this one, because the pressure is on all of these drivers to be able to compete at the highest level. And one little mistake can cost you qualification. It is that simple with this series. So the key is stay clean, but you've got to be at the front of the field to be able to get the potential qualifying position for next year's Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup.
Absolutely, and we say hello to you for the first time from the RaceSpot TV booth. Thank you for joining us for today's pre-race coverage. Just 15 minutes away from getting in to today's action from Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, a classic racing track. But let's talk a little bit about the format, Paul, because we talk about it being a shorter season. It's not just a shorter qualifying season, there's also a lot of intrigue around this qualifying format. And as we take a look at the format up on your screen, 5-week qualifying championship runs on top of the regular Porsche iRacing Cup. 30 drivers each week that get the top number of points are going to be eligible in for our Super Session races. And at the end of 5 weeks, the top 20 drivers, pending eligibility, we must point that out, it's all pending the iRacing approval, we qualify for next year's Super Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw what happened last year with the qualifiers, with the champion not actually being eligible for the championship, and so he was unable to take part. And that was Pete Berham, by the way. But the level of intensity that we're seeing just in the races, in the strength of field races, to get themselves into into this Super Session, is absolutely crazy. It is just unbelievable, the level of competition. I mean, we just had finished the last chance race now, and there was over 7,000 average I rating in that session. So you can tell that people want to be in this series.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the pinnacle of road racing, the iRacing service. Let's take a look then at our 5-week qualifying schedule. This is only the 5 Super Session races that will determine our grid for the Porsche Esports Super Cup. It started last week at Okayama. We didn't have coverage of that one. We're going to start here, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And the thing you'll notice, Paul, take a look at the lap counter there. Short races, about 30 minutes in length. It means that every single lap is important, and drivers do not have much opportunity to get to the front of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider that a track like this, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, it's known to have chaos happen here. There's no denial about it. I mean, the first year that we came here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, there was no manner of a mammoth accident at the second chicane, down at turns 3 and 4. So things like that can happen, and it will have an effect on these races here today. And the pressure, we keep on saying this, but the pressure truly is on here to get to this session and then win it.
Well, let's take a look then at some of the highlights from round number 1. It took place from Okayama, and a little bit of an interesting turn of events with some brand new faces coming to the Porsche Esports Super Cup. You'll take a look at the replay provided to us by our very own Hugo Luis, putting together a fantastic overview for the entire viewers. But Paul, Okayama, it's a tough track, qualifying very important, and there you'll see some of the gaps between the leaders. Zach Campbell for the Apex Racing team takes home the pole position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that 10th place, 2/10 off of pole position with ALEJANDRO. Of course, Porsche Mobile 1 Super Cup driver himself in real life, so trying to get himself involved in this. But the how compact the grid is, it reminds me of the World Championship Series, so definitely limited opportunities for these drivers. And, well, Andre Martins into turn number 1 at Okayama, 3 into 1 doesn't go, and he ends up in the gravel trap on the outside. Past Jurgis, he's somebody who has experience in World Championships, and he got heavily involved in an incident there, and well, the incidents, unfortunately for the drivers out there, just kept on coming here.
Yeah, this is one down into the hairpin. This is Lasse back getting spun by, I believe, I think that's Jack Sedgwick behind him, one of the SIMUCube BENECKE cars. Watch the rest of this replay. More carnage as Lasse back stranded in the middle of the track, waits for an opportunity for a safe rejoin. You see Peter Berryman in the back having more issues at Okayama. Berryman, one of those drivers who we were hoping to see maybe make a strong run in qualification this year, having some issues in the first 2 rounds. This is Alexander Thiebe, by the way, going side by side through one of these double hairpins, and good to see some of these liveries start to come in, Paul, and for today's broadcast, hope to see a few more of them. But Thiebe right now, you see battle side by side behind him. They head down into the last corner.
Yeah, so Alexander Thiebe, of course, one of those drivers who have competed in the Porsche Tag Heuer Sport Super Cup, trying to re-qualify for the series. That's something that you know, some of these drivers didn't want to participate in this, but they finished outside the top 20. And look at that, still the intense action was going on. Ricardo Ferreira is a really solid, good driver as Ricardo. Then there's a spin there, and more carnage, more chaos. Oh, and you see, that's one of the things of not holding your brakes, getting other people involved in accidents. That could be something that affects people here today.
Yeah, and Montreal's such a tight and twisty track as well. I mean, it's a street circuit, so expecting to see some exciting racing action. Then we see another prior competitor in the Super Cup, Brian Lockwood, getting a sideways, a little bit of contact with one of his fellow competitors, and then going to really send it through the final corner, trying to get a good run down into turn number 1, getting blocked all the way to the wall by Ayachan Guven. This is the type of racing we're expecting here, Paul. This is the chance to fight for $200,000 and the right to call yourself a world champion. This really cannot be understated. This is the pinnacle of road racing in iRacing.
It certainly is, and to have somebody like Ayachan involved in this qualification process as well, it's good to see him involved in that. We saw him earlier in the virtual edition of the Mobile 1 Porsche Super Cup, as more action down at the hairpin. Okayama was always a good opener, I felt, because there are opportunities to overtake there. It's not the grippiest of circuits, and it's technical as well in its nature. Thomas Tatala, another one of your drivers who are trying to re-qualify, but look at that, 3 wide into the hairpin behind. Brian Lockwood pushing his way through and getting up there in positions as Govan then, and round he goes at the second of those hairpins.
And a slight unsafe rejoin there. Connor Maddox screaming somewhere as he just gets a little bit of an inkling about that, but lots of action. Okayama as well, an interesting one, as we see, I believe that's Walters for RAG Esports getting in a tangle with the number 9, but Okayama interesting, Paul, because it's also a free track, and we talk about this being open to the iRacing public. This is one of those tracks that maybe encourages people to try and compete that little bit more against these top-level sim racers and get into World Championship competition. Maybe not as a competitor, but maybe just as a viewer as well, indeed.
Absolutely. Anything to get engagement from the members and from the competitors on iRacing. As there we go then, Zach Campbell, who took victory in that opening super session, and he will be delighted with that. I believe he races for Apex Racing Team, so good to see them represented. They had a good strong second half to the season for them in the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Sport Super Cup. But there will be your results up on screen. So some names that are very familiar to a lot of us who work on these broadcasts, but a few that are not familiar in the World Championship scene either.
Yeah, we'll also look at Charlie Collins and Diogo C. Pinto, SimRC drivers, 2nd and 3rd. That's a good start to the qualifying series for those drivers representing the German outfit that we've seen grow increasingly strong on RaceSpot TV, take a look, by the way, at the rest of your finishes. You'll see some other names. Jack Sedgwick, for example, edge of the top 20. Only 5 of the relegated drivers from the 2020 edition of the Super Cup have made it into the top 20 as things stand. So as we scroll through the final drivers on screen, a lot of changes, some new faces potentially expected. We take a look at the championship standings of 50 points to Zach Campbell for Apex Racing Team. You can see the delta now to 20th place Jack Sedgwick. He's on the bubble, if we were to use that word. But Paul, I mean, it's important now as we head into the second race. For someone like Campbell, who had that fantastic run in race number 1, he's got to now build upon that and really show us exactly why he deserves his World Championship license.
Absolutely. Getting that opening race victory is crucial. It gives you momentum going into the rest of the season, but you've got to follow that up with results week after week. And we've seen how just getting one win can really have a good positive impact to a driver in this car. It's a tricky car to handle, and it certainly is one that these drivers do take a little bit of getting used to here.
And Campbell has a lot of experience in the IndyCar. There you can see, based in Georgia, the USA. He won the 2019 Indy Elite Series. He's also Kevin Ellis's junior race engineer in the past season of the Super Cup. So he has exposure in top-level sim racing competitions, but winner of round number 1. A lot of work to do in the next 4 rounds. But let's take a look at some other drivers as well, Paul, because Tuomas Tätälä, let's take a look at him. Finished 24th in last year's Super Cup. He was right on the bubble, not that far away from managing to lock himself back into the championship, as it were, but you can see there, Finnish national champion. This is a very strong driver who needs some strong performances to get back up to the top level.
Certainly, he is somebody who really did... He was in and there about the second half of the season. He did pick up, got a couple of 3 top 10 finishes towards the end of the championship. So the Cover driver will be looking to maybe take that progression through these qualifiers into the World Championship next year, if he qualifies. If he qualifies,
and he is surrounded by many of his teammates also trying to qualify, the likes of Pekka Toivonen, Matti Sipilä, Antti Ahola as well. Some of these drivers that had some strong performances in the support series, the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge.
The Sprint Challenge was tremendous as well, it must be said. And it's a great way of getting those people who are involved in the Sprint Challenge up to speed with getting into that routine of this is when the World Championship events are happening, and this is the level of intensity you're going to have. Well, that's at that level. It ramps up once again here in the qualifiers, and then it ramps up even again into the World Championship.
Absolutely. So just a few minutes left before the Super Session goes live, and 30 drivers are going to find out if they have the chance to get some qualifying times on the board. But let's take a look then at the track for today's affair. And this is an interesting one. It's a street circuit built on an island, and you can see there on the track map 4.36 kilometers, 14 turns, Paul, and this is known for being one of the most crazy racetracks we have on the iRacing service.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, of course, 4 chicanes here, the most famous of those being the Wall of Champions final chicane there at the end of the lap. The hairpin is one of the key overtaking spots, but if you do throw it down the inside there, you can maybe get the cut back and try and get the run out of that into that final chicane. Slipstream will be crucial around here, but also being able to monster those curbs as well. Having a compliant car will be one of the things to look out for here.
So we've taken a look then at the track map. Let's talk about some of the keys to victory in today's race. And I mean, the most important one, Paul, maximize qualifying. This is not just in the Porsche iRacing Cup Super Sessions. This is in any top-level competitions. The gaps are so small, the competitors are so closely matched, and in a car like this where there's not much setup that can really be done, you need to maximize your 2 qualifying laps, get the best that you can do, and start as close to the front as possible, because that's going to help you avoid trouble on lap number 1.
Yeah, and that is key. Is lap 1 is always really close, really intense, tight circuit here as well into the chicanes, checking up. You've got to be careful there. The curbs, as I mentioned, you've got to be able to have a car that's compliant with those curbs, because they will spit you out, especially that final chicane, into the Wall of Champions.
Absolutely, and Wall of Champions, I mean, it's not just staying out of the Wall of Champions, Paul. You mentioned it. You could, if you compromise your entry into the corner just a little bit, you might lose out then down in the run to turn number 1, the center S's. So it's all about just slingshotting your way through the corner in the most optimal way possible. Yeah,
it's about getting through that as cleanly as possible. Yes, you can make moves into the corner, but it's sometimes better to compromise the driver in front, make them take a defensive line, and then back off a little bit and get the run out of that chicane down towards turn number 1. That is one of the areas there, as we see it on the footage there behind us. And yeah, get that run out of the chicane is crucial.
So just a few moments left then before the session goes up. We're going to switch over to the race session in just a few moments' time. But before we do that, let's take a look then at some season highlights from the prior season of the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Like we mentioned, Sebastian Job takes home the championship after defending champion Josh Rogers took the fight all the way to the last round at Monza, but too little too late for Rogers. He'll have to come back next year to try and reclaim the throne. But for Sebastian Job, the opportunity to try and become a 2-time champion awaits.
"40 of the best sim racers. $200,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup by iRacing 2020 is on. Joe is going to claim victory. The race gets underway and a good strong start. Barcelona weekend for Max BENECKE. Main race here at Donington.
Contact between the two of them.
Third win of the season, is second in a main race. Looks like a good launch off pole position for the first time in his career to Alejandro Sanchez. Sebastian Job. Alejandro Sanchez, 47, and I guarantee there is a 22 car there. Is that going to work? He's on the curbs. No, and here, up the inside goes Rogers. Josh Rogers wins. That was an epic battle.
We are underway for 30 minutes at Brands. Sanchez and Job, they make contact through Druid. Josh Rogers wins at Brands Hatch.
Can he keep it on the island? No.
Sanchez is off.
Can he hold it?
Oh no.
And they are both off. Pole, he won the sprint, he won the main race and start the long, breathless, power-sapping climb. 27 still in front, no, 22. Gets on the grass, drifts out wide, cones bite dust. Sebastian Job, it'll be win number 6.
And we are away here at Le Mans. Gets a little bit tighter. P2, P1 the championship, P1, P2 in this race. Joshua Rogers finishes with the race victory. That shows how tight the margins here.
Job is where he needs to be.
Not going to let it go.
Well, a big crash at the front at the second chicane. And that's going to be one of your championship contenders.
It's all over. Graham Carroll, he is going to claim victory. Sebastian Job, a British driver, wins a world championship.
So here we are then, round number 2 of our Super Session races for determining the 20 drivers that will make it into the 2021 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. We're here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. And for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, I am joined by Paul Smith for this one. TV cameras, as always, provided to us by Istvan Ballo and Track Cams 22. Additional car cameras provided by our very own Tyler Maxson. Live timing for today's event is available at timing71.org. Head over there to follow along with your favorite drivers as they make their way through this 30-minute affair. Qualifying underway. Let's take a look then at the track conditions. 4.31 kilometers is this 14-turn circuit. Fairly cool day, as you see there, partly cloudy. But Paul, the important thing here, look at that wind, 20 kilometers an hour, and that's going to be gusting, and that's going to be tricky for these drivers in some of these heavier braking zones.
Well, It is and it isn't, because it's not the most aerodynamically dependent car in the world, but it still will affect them a little bit here. So definitely those drivers will be finding the conditions a little bit challenging, but the track's nice and cool, relatively speaking. So that means that they won't need to worry too much about the tyres going off towards the end of this race.
Yeah, no pit stops in this one. 17 laps on the docket. 5 minutes still to go in qualifying right now, so time for drivers to get out there and put a qualifying time down on the board. And we're taking a look through the names that we're seeing here on our list right now, and there's some interesting names here. The one I wanted to kind of take a look at, Paul, is you see here part of the Even Esports team. This is one of these organizations that's been building up over the last few months. This is an organization partnered, by the way, with Tommy Ostergaard, driver for VRS Coanda, and all of these drivers that you're going to see in this livery here, Paul, are incredibly young, and I think Oscar Bixrud is about 14 years old, trying to make his way into World Championship competition.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel old. Yeah, what an opportunity for Oscar. It shows the tremendous ability of drivers out there and of people to be able to get those runs. We're just going on to the second lap of qualifying for these drivers. They only get 2 laps here as well for them to set a qualifying time. So pressure is on, and 25th down to 30th, yet to score a lap time. And plenty of time to get those times in, but the second lap is usually the quicker lap, as we're on board with Josh Thompson down towards the hairpin. And this is somebody who has really set himself the goal of getting into the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. With Williams Esports, he's matured so much as Josh in the last couple of years, and he can be an unbelievably quick driver, but he was known for being a little bit wild. He's calmed that down a little bit, and it's really working out for him.
It really has, and this entire Williams team as well, trying to put their best foot forward. As we see Thompson going through the Wall of Champions, you'll see him sticking on the right-hand side of the track, trying to minimize the distance that he travels down to the start-finish line. And this might actually be his second flying lap, because you'll see there, Paul, he's abandoned this one. That's going to be it. Provisional pole position, though, a 1:35.742, as Thibaut Casabon and then Moreno Surica manages to go even faster. Time's coming in thick and fast right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what's happening here, is all of a sudden those second lap times are coming in. Everybody has set a lap time here, and I'm just having a look at the timing screen you so kindly provide to everybody here at the timing71.org. Yeah, first through to 30th, the entire field covered by just about half a second. That is... We don't even get it that close in the World Championship Series, so this is incredible. The amount of time and effort that these drivers will have been putting in to try and get the best qualifying position that they can. But Salva Talens, MSI Esports driver, coming across the line, 35.8, moves up to 13th on the grid. It's so close, it's managed to break our on-screen graphic there.
Yeah, so don't worry. The positions, at least on the left-hand side of your screen, are up to date. So is Charlie Collins for Sim RC on provisional pole position, as Pekka Toivonen goes just 0.03 of a second slower. There's 1/10 of a second right now separating the top 5 drivers, 0.2 of a second separating the top 10. Lap times exceptionally close. We talk about maximizing qualifying, Paul, at the pre-race show, one of our keys to victory. Right now, Charlie Collins, the Welshman, putting his best foot forward, looking to be good, as everyone, I think, is actually done with qualifying. 2 cars still out on track. That's Eduardo Borget and Luis Tavares, but I don't think they have any lap times left to set.
I don't think... Oh, no, Tavares just coming across the line into 18th, so that's a final lap time for him. Borget, Eduardo not able to set another lap time here, so we are pretty much set. Oh no, he's actually on a second lap here, but I think he's just come out of the pits, so it won't count.
So then 50 seconds left in qualifying, and we are set for a crackerjack of a race. 30 drivers looking to slot themselves into the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, separated by just 0.8 of a second. The margin for error is going to be absolutely nothing, and Paul, something that we should mention, I was watching some of the races yesterday as drivers tried to qualify their way into the Super Session. Now, how do I say this? There was a lot of chaos down into turn number 1, but the other thing I noticed was through that last corner, that final chicane, slowdowns being served, and that might be something that the race leaders have to be careful of. You have to balance that, the risk versus reward of pushing that last corner versus getting that slowdown.
Yeah, it's being on the edge, but not going over the edge, which is crucial here in this one. But we're all set, and we'll be able to give you the starting grid very shortly.
Indeed, starting grid, Charlie Collins for simrc.de with the pole position, a 1:35.587. Look at the gaps, though, for the rest of your field. Pekka Toivonen going to line up alongside your pole position winner, just 0.04 of a second off that time from the number 4. Moreno Surica for Williams Esport going to line up row number 2 alongside Thibaut Casabon for R8G Esports. Moving through the field, you see one of the other Kova cars. That's Tuomas Tätälä trying to re-qualify his way up into the World Championship. Then you got Alexander Walters with Josh Thompson and Carlos Fenalosa in 8th position.
Yeah, further down your order then, Zach Campbell ahead of, last week winner, ahead of Danny Algabet with Michael Gard, who we saw racing in the Sprint Cup, and Phil Dennis in 12th. Alessandro Bicco just ahead of Salva Talens from MSI Esports. Jack Sedgwick, another driver trying to re-qualify ahead of Lasse Bach for the Williams Esports team.
So that's 16th place, halfway through the field. A second Williams car right there. Daniel Lafuente in 17th. Luis Tavares going to line up in 18th. Matti Sipola and Matti Kaidasoa on the edge of the top 20. So two Mattis going to be trying to move their way forward. Alexander Thiba, 21st place, not where the red line driver would have wanted to be. We'll scroll through the remaining names on your field because we're starting to get down to crunch time. You see some of the names at the end of your field. You got Maxime Reimstein, who's an ace in this car. But here we go, about to get ready to go racing from the circuit to Gilles Villeneuve. Cars ready to go. As we just wait for the lights to go green. Engines start to rev up, and it's going to be Charlie Collins, the Welshman, who's going to take us away from the field. So here we go. Lights are on. Engines revving. The Porsche 911 Cup cars ready to go. Here at the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve for 17 laps of racing action, and a great start there for one of the R8G cars in the middle of your field. Further back as well, they're already going 3 wide as they dive their way down to the Senna S's for the very first time. They managed to get through cleanly. You see Phoebe 3 wide in the background, but Charlie Collins managed to pull away from Pekka Toivonen and Casabon as there's a crash in the background.
Huge incident. And one of them is, I believe, last week's winner. Zach Campbell was involved in that one. So last week's winner involved, and Daniel Lafuente is on his side.
We'll take a look at the replay then at the end of this first lap. But Zach Campbell with a disastrous start to this race. Not what he would have wanted. Lafuente already reset to the pit lane, so he scored currently as the position race leader rather, and he'll reset and get some damage repaired, but Charlie Collins leads from Pekka Toivonen, Thibaut Casabon, Moreno Surica, and Tuomas Tätälä, top 5. So we head down into the hairpin for the first time. It appears other than that one incident though, Paul, we managed to get through fairly cleanly. It looks like Campbell, Lafuente, and Bicco, the big losers there. Yeah,
they're the big ones that have lost out on that one, and it's so easy to get caught up in an instant at that first chicane. The hairpin as well. There's a little bit of bumping and boring going on down your order. So everybody's getting the elbows out here on lap 1. They've got to be careful, because if you pick up damage on this lap 1, with there being so much key to the top speed of this car, especially down into the final chicane, they really will feel the effects of that, as we've got a car that's cut across the chicane. That's Lasse back, so he's going to be hit with a slow down penalty and drop all the way to the back.
Yeah, and look at him crawling as he tries to serve that penalty. One of the Kova cars going to look to the outside as Back tries to continue clearing that penalty. The 21 in front, that's Lauritsen, as they scrap it out through the Senna S's, and that is Sipola, who's going to get the position on Lasse Back down in towards turn number 3, back around the outside. Not really a fighting opportunity there, and he's going to cut across the Kova car. Slight contact made, and Sipola off into the tire wall, and he's going to rejoin right in front of Bogart there.
Oh, that was... there's not a lot. Once the car's out of control across the grass there, as much as you might hold the brakes, he has just ended up firing it backwards into it. We get some lovely shots of the circuit there. Hopefully we can get a look at the actual action that happened there. There we go. Well, we caught the end of it there, which is Bogart. We'll get another look at that in just a second, but yeah, that was not the proudest moment there, and there's very little that Eduardo could do in that situation.
Let's go take a look then as well at the incident off the start. Lafuente, you'll see, around the outside trying to make it work. Thebes tries to stick his nose. And in fact, you can see Campbell already was around, so Campbell and Biko made contact there. And unfortunately for Lafuente, just gets collected as a result of that.
You could see how Lafuente was trying to squeeze in a little bit to give space to that incident. And before you know it, he's up and over on his side and watching the rest of the race from the sidelines. But here's Zach Campbell then. Look at what happened to him. Oh, he got a touch from the inside. And well, Biko was very much the innocent party there in all of that. He just had nowhere to go but the tyre wall.
And the other car was the 26, I do believe. So that was Carlos Fenellosa. Let's see if we can get a better look at what happened to Biko. You can see down here, just minding his own business for the most part. Sees the incident happening in front of him. Nowhere to go. Campbell stopped and stationary, and there you can see Lafuente in the background going around. Lots of carnage down on the first lap, but we jump back to the live pictures because Pekka Toivonen trying to chase down Charlie Collins. Collins came in second place in your first Super Session race, looking to try and get the race win here and really set himself up nicely for the last 3 rounds of this qualifying series.
Yeah, this is really good stuff from Charlie Collins, trying to make a breakaway at the front and try and break that slipstream. Breaking the slipstream in this car is crucial because if you can do that, you can then control your pace at the front and you're not dragging the rest of your field along with you. But you look at Pekka Toivonen in a solid position, but look at the queue of cars behind him. Kazabon, Sarika, Tettala, Volters, Thompson, Fenellosa. The names just keep on rolling off. It's a who's who of sim racing, and they're all desperate to make it into the World Championship. Little mistake further down for Sedgwick, and I think Gard has got a slowdown penalty as well. He has.
Gard has a slowdown, but it's Phil Dennis who's trying to challenge Carlos Fenellosa down into turn number 1. Over-under attempted from the Road to Indy driver. Compete in the real world. Representing Vendaval Sim Racing here in the sim racing side of things, trying to qualify into the Super Cup, but not able to get past Fenellosa, and Fenellosa going to hold on to 8th position. Paul, we must point out as well, we talked about pending eligibility for the top 20 drivers in the Super Cup. There is also not live race stewarding, but there is race stewards that are going to investigate the race results at the conclusion of the race. Protests can be submitted by all of these drivers, and there is the opportunity for some of these incidents that we've seen to be adjudicated off the track.
Exactly, that's it. So just because you get maybe a good result here at the end of the race doesn't necessarily mean that your day is done. You may get hauled up in front of the stewards and asked to explain yourself. Well, not so much asked to explain yourself, but be told, I'm sorry, but your move at this point wasn't acceptable, wasn't of a high enough standard, and you'll be adjudicated a penalty. But Lockwood, further down in your order, perhaps he's just gone into the back of Kaida Soja on this timing screen, because Kaida Soja has dropped down from 14th to 16th. In fact, he's coming under pressure as well from Alexander Tibet as well.
Yeah, all sorts of battling happening now as well. There was a battle between Alexander Walters and Josh Thompson for 7th on track as they go side by side down in towards the final corner. There was slight contact being made as well. I heard it in the background of his shot. Not exactly sure who that was, but you can see a slow car, and that's Samuel Lee Barrett for Core Sim Racing, who had to shortcut the track and now serves another slowdown penalty.
And it's so brutal as the slowdown penalty around this track. It really is. It's so hard, and look at them all just checking up here at the chicane, out of the turns 1 and 2, down into 3 and 4. Pretty much one line through here. If you go side by side through there, then you've got to have cooperation of both drivers and you slow each other down. But looking back then, as we were just then, some close action behind as well. That's the 25 getting involved. That's Maxim Ramstein with, let's say, Back. Back is trying to make a bit of a recovery drive, down 8 positions in this race.
Yeah, let's jump back to the front of your field, though, because Collins is really starting to pull a gap to Toivonen now. The Kova driver is starting to struggle a little bit as Collins for Sim RC pulls away. Gap now 1.4 seconds. And look at the queue of cars forming behind the number 15. Kazabon, Sarika, Tattler, Walters, Thompson. So 5 cars stacked up behind the second place runner. And we should point out as well, Paul, that there isn't too much incentive, I would think, for some of these drivers further up in your field to scrap it out. Yes, you can get a few more points, but the risk of losing all of the points that you're in a position to get. Look at Campbell. Started 7th on track, now all the way down in 26th place. There's sometimes not worth the risk to try and make the move happen.
Yeah, if you could get yourself some really good points, and we saw after round 1 what the point situation was like, then you really can gain yourself some good position in the championship and in terms of qualifying for the World Championship. And these drivers at the front stay in line astern for the time being, and they're just behaving themselves. It's lap 6, so there's still plenty of time available for these drivers to make a move. If anything, you just look after your tyres, look after your brakes, keep the pressure on the car in front, because if you can afford one little mistake, if you can push one little mistake at these cars, there's more battling further down your field, of course. Ramstein is involved then, number 25, with Lasse Bach in there. So Bach has made his way past Ramstein. But if you can force that mistake up at the front and gain yourself a position in a relatively safe way, then that's the way you do it. But right now you don't need to force the issue. Whereas these further back, they do need to try and progress forward. Yeah, and talking about forcing the issue around the outside at turn number 6 for Lasse Bach. What a move for the Williams eSport driver. Number 1 car, that means by iRating, the strongest iRating in your field, and he's putting on a clinic there with a fantastic passing move down into turn number 6. Now, on the back straightaway, trying to jump himself up into the top 20, but this is not where Bach would have wanted to be. He would have wanted to be further up in your field, and indeed, some of his teammates having a much better run of it right now. Moreno Sarika, Josh Thompson, the 2 Williams cars in the top 10. Looking pretty good as we jump back to these live pictures at the front. Pekka Toivonen continues to slide a little bit further behind your current race leader, Charlie Collins, and you can see there the lap gaps just inching further and further. Lap number 5, a little bit more than an inch, half a second gain by Collins. And right now, Toivonen really starting to feel the pressure behind him, Paul. Certainly is, and he's lost that slipstream as well from the car in front, with him being about 0.17, 0.18 behind. So he's now dragging those cars along behind him, and he's having to do it whilst creating the hole in the air for them behind them. They will have to just look after their engine temperatures towards the end of this race if they just stay in this line all along. That's something you have to keep an eye on. But Thibaut Casabon, what a driver he is. He did race and participate in this year's Tag Heuer eSports Super Cup, but right now having to re-qualify. You can see how everything just checks up through that hairpin. It's so difficult to get things right through there.
Yeah, I think Sarika actually lost out a little bit from that checkup as well, as looks like Matti Sipilä is having some issues. He tried to come out of pit lane after that incident and had to dive back down, get some more repairs to that car. You can see battle for second though. They're all still single filed, but this is bringing in some of the cars behind. You see Jack Sedgwick at the rear end of this train slowly catching up as well, and I wonder if this is starting to be a bit of a battle pack, as it looks like Phil Dennis has had a big issue through the Wall of Champions, a big checkup. And you see Brian Lockwood managing to get around the outside. Let's take a look at the RaceSpot TV replay. What happened to Phil Dennis?
Well, you can see a little bit of damage to his front right as well, as we're still here. Let's have a look at the replay, see what's happened there. So he's fine, no damage to the front of his car there. So I think he's collected the curb wrong. Up over the curbs, yep, and boom, into the wall. His glancing blow. It's the left side of his car. Feeling the effects of that. You can see launch over that curb, and it's that curb there. You've got to be careful of that second curb, because that will fire you into that wall. That's exactly what's happened there, and it's given him some damage down the right hand side of his car. That will be affecting his top speed.
Very much so. Let's take another look then at an aerial look. Look at how he launches the car off the curbing as he tries to commit as much as possible, carry the momentum down the main straightaway. Fortunately for, I believe that's Danny Elgabe right behind him, not going to run into the back of the number 3 machine. So for Venderval's Phil Dennis, not what he would have wanted. Another issue, by the way, further down in the field, you see 3 wide down the main straight. That's one of the even esports cars in the middle. Lasse back through on the inside, but Samuel Hubert on the outside gets squeezed straight into the tire barrier. Nothing that he could have done in that situation, Paul. Just an unfortunate incident as they tried to go 3 wide into turn number 1.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, oh, there's the space there, but when you're getting squeezed from one side, if you're that middle car, all you could try and do is hold your line and hope that the cars either side of you give you that space. But if one car starts coming across, there's very little that you can do about it, and you're the meat in the sandwich there.
Absolutely. We take a look back at the battle for your race lead because pressure's starting to build up on Toivonen. Gap now 2 seconds, and Walters behind, Kazabon behind, putting on more pressure at this point. Thompson was trying to get past Kazabon's teammate Walters just a few moments ago down into turn number 1. Something else to just note about that incident with Lebert into turn number 1. You don't really want to be on the outside 3 wide into the center S's, Paul. That's not really the optimal racing line. You could try and say that you're going to make it back to the inside into turn 2, but I mean, you're always going to get squeezed on the outside there into the runoff area.
Yeah, it's rather better to just, just get off the throttle a little bit, just breathe off the throttle, allow those 2 that are alongside you to battle it out, because you may end up benefiting off of those 2, scrapping it out and getting the run out of turn number 2. But yeah, it certainly is a tricky one, and holding the outside line, not the most advisable, and you pointed out there, you get pushed wide into that runoff. But this front train, I mean, Carlos Fenalosa has joined that train. Jack Sedgwick isn't that far off.
Oh, it's in the background. Sorry, Lockwood gets past Ergobay with a big move down through the inside into the chicane. That was a bold one. I think Ergobay just had to give the position up there, Paul.
Yeah, and we'll get another look at this one then. So Lockwood, look at that, darting out from underneath the rear wing. Ergobay realising what was happening there. I think he may have had a slight bit of a slowdown penalty, or maybe a bad run out of the hairpin. That's allowed Lockwood to go up into 12th places. It's up 10 places, is Brian, in this race. That's a really good performance from the American as they're heading through once again. But Brian Lockwood, he's the man who famously said he'd practiced 60 hours before the opening round of the Porsche Tag-Heuer Esports Super Cup this year at Zandvoort, and unfortunately he wasn't able to commit that sort of time to the rest of the championship in terms of practice, and that showed with him finishing just outside the top 20.
And it was so super close for Lockwood, and it's what could have been for him if he hadn't missed the second to last race at the Circuit de la Sarthe. Could have potentially secured a spot in the championship. Now it's got it all to do, as you see once again, Kazabon deep under braking, trying to close the gap to Toivonen, but just not able to power it off the hairpin to try and get the run down into the last corner. Right now it does appear as though Kazabon does have a little bit more pace, Paul, but just not really able to get close enough to make anything happen. And you see this train of cars, no real need to make any risky moves at this point if you're Kazabon.
Kazabon, he needs to maybe change his approach if he is trying to make a move into second place. He obviously feels that he's the quicker driver than Pekka Toivonen, but if he's going to make that move into the hairpin, he needs to get a better run out of it, and I think maybe V'ing off the hairpin a bit more, make it more of a V rather than try to hug the inside. The problem with that, of course, is that it opens you up to Morena Sarica, who's hanging around, loitering, waiting for any opportunity to come up. So it's so easy for us to sit here and say, oh, all he needs to do is this. When you're in the heat of the battle, under serious pressure, and you're in a good point scoring position, you just need to sit back and think, okay, I'm in third, these are good points. If I get the opportunity, yeah, I'll go for it, but I won't risk anything.
And all of these cars are spec cars as well, just under 500 horsepower, about 1,300 kilos once you include the driver weight. Unfortunately, in iRacing, that's not going to be too much variation in that one. It's all simulated to be the same exact car, and Toivonen right now getting a bit wide on the exit of turn number 9. Not going to compromise his run into the hairpin that much. Collins, by the way, up to a 3-second gap as Sarika once again deep under braking, and Tatala, Toivonen's teammate as well, getting a little bit checked up here. So now you see that train of cars. Well, it's gone up from just 5 to about 2nd through 11th. Locked up there, and as Lockwood continues to push the pace, we're looking like this could be a train from 2nd all the way down to 16th in about 5 laps time. We're about to complete lap number 11 out of 17 here in our 2nd round of Porsche Esports Super Cup qualifiers. And Charlie Collins for SimRC.de continues to lead the way as Pekka Toivonen holds up the chasing pack behind him, but fortunately for him, he's got a lot of teammates behind him as well.
There's been an incident further down. Piatella is involved, and so too is Andre Martins. So Andre Martins, a big loser in that one. He's dropped down the order. It's at the final chicane, and we'll get another look at this one, but I think it's, look at this, too wide down into the chicane. They've got the 10 car of Mikel Gard in front. Andre Martins, well, where do you go if you're Martins? Not a lot of places you can go, and he just didn't give the space on the apex. Oh, he gets clipped as well on the rejoin. He's just not giving that space. He's got significant suspension damage. That's going to be his race done there for Andre, and he has taken the tour back to the pits, which is why it shows 1st place. But I just feel that he didn't quite leave the space for the car on the left-hand side going through that 2nd apex.
Yeah, let's try and take a look at this from a slower aerial angle. You can see here, Martin's going to get all the way on the right-hand side. Piatella on the left-hand side, not much room to go. And as a result, I think, of launching himself over that initial curbing pole, that's what really set Martins up to not really have control over his car.
Yeah.
And that's where the number 8 hits the wall of champions and gets significant damage and has to retire from this one.
Yeah, it was a 25 of Maxim Ramstein who did actually clip him, and that could actually cause issues for Maxim as well. Through no fault of his own, it could cause him significant problems. So you can see in the background of that shot just then, just how close these top drivers are getting to the wall of champions right there. So Lockwood is going a little bit quicker, I can see on timing. So he is gaining on them, but not really gaining enough time to be able to make any challenges just yet. But this is what happens when you've got a slipstream train of cars and you've got the car at the head of the field being more defensive than attacking, and it's just holding everybody up, and more drivers are getting involved in this one.
Yeah, that gap out front now up to 3.6 seconds. So the Welshman, Charlie Collins, looking pretty good. With just a few laps to go here from the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve finished 2nd in our 1st round of these Porsche Super Cup qualifiers. Gonna get the win here today, it's looking like, for the Welshman and for the German SimRC team. Strong opening run in these qualifying series. We continue to ride on board with RAG Esports and Casabon, and we must talk about the RAG team a little bit, Paul, because Romain Grosjean, part of his endeavors over the last year, he's set up this sim racing team, brought on a lot of top-level talent in association with the AAA team, but just announced yesterday, RAG Esports Junior. They've signed up some of the top French drivers in the iRacing service, all under the age of 18, and they're looking to try and make a charge here on the Porsche Esports Super Cup. One of the drivers that they've signed, by the way, Quentin Valentin, not making it into the Super Session here, but he currently leads the Porsche iRacing Cup overall in terms of the point standings.
Yeah, it's a great to see this investment coming into sim racing, and great to see such big names as Romain Grosjean involved here. Proud Frenchman. Brian Lockwood dropping down the order, although there goes Phil Dennis to the runoff. He'll have a monster of a slowdown penalty there, but Lockwood has lost 2 positions through all of this. So has he just got it wrong at the chicane? Because he had a gap behind him, so there's got to be a mistake here at the chicane. And we said how one mistake, he's pushing hard, trying to move himself forward. Oh, no, he's fine there. Something's gone on. He must have had a slowdown penalty or something, because he's having to serve a slowdown penalty. He's cut a little bit too much of the chicane. He then tries to get back up to speed, and Phil Dennis around the outside. Not going to happen there, and Lockwood down to 14th now from 12th.
Yeah, I don't think Dennis was really I don't think Dennis had any idea what was happening there with Lockwood, as Lockwood tried to get back up to racing speed. We'll take one more look on board with the Road to Indy driver. You can see deep under braking, trying to carry the momentum around the outside. Not going to work, and as we often see in the real world, having to take to that escape road, trying to get back on track. He will have a monster slowdown to serve. He's down back in 18th position as things run, but we jump back to live pictures, Paul.
Yeah, we are, because Thibaut Casabon has started showing his nose to Pekka Toivonen down that back straight. I think he's had enough now, has Thibaut, and he sees an opportunity coming up now as we head into those final few laps of the race here. So 3 laps remaining, and all of a sudden business could be about to pick up here.
3 laps to go. Look at that train of cars as they dive their way down into turns 3 and 4. Toivonen has half the field basically stacked up behind him. 10 cars in this queue as we now head into turn number 6 and 7. Another one of these tricky left-right chicanes. Casabon trying to close under braking, but Sarika as well is doing a good job of just sticking as close to the 2 car as he can. We head under the bridge once again. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, Paul, because if I'm Casabon at this opportunity, you've had 15 laps to try and make the move happen. Do you really want to try and risk everything on the last few laps of the race, or you're going to hold on to that 3rd and final podium spot and look good in terms of that points classification?
I just think he's trying to get in the head of Toivonen in terms of showing his nose to try and force a mistake. And Toivonen very slow into the hairpin, but gets the run out of the corner, and Casabon now just having to slot into position. He's not had the best of laps here as Casabon to be able to close enough to make any moves, but as I say, just try and get in the head of the car in front. You might as well try and force a mistake from the driver in front and see if you can gain one more position here.
Across the line once again, then 2 laps to go. Casabon closing down into turn number 1. The Senna S is not going to be close enough to make the move stick. Take a look at the train of cars as well. No one going for any risky moves. Casabon closes on the rear bumper of the 15 once again, but Kova and Pekka Toivonen holding on strong with 2 laps to go then here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It's been a quiet race out front then for Charlie Collins in his SimRC.de number 4 machine. But Paul, what a stunning drive. Took the pole position, has led every single lap of this race, and for the German outfit, they'll be pretty happy with their Welshman's performances in the first 2 rounds of this qualifying series.
The race isn't over yet. There's still a lap and a half for him. So I'm not doing a Murray Walker with Nigel Mansell car spluttering to a halt on the exit of the hairpin. So I'm not doing that. I'm not calling this yet. There's still far enough for these drivers to go yet, but time is running out, and I don't see anybody making any desperation moves. I think it's a case of just hold your position, really. Try and hold on to it. I say, just get closer together in that hairpin once again. But now this is the chance for Casabon. He's a little bit closer this lap, and he's in the slipstream, and he's going to just put the pressure on here, I feel.
So getting closer, just a 1/10 of a second separating them, but Casabon lifts off the throttle and releases the pressure on Toivonen just a little bit. You don't want to overly pressure down into the braking zone sometimes. That will just potentially cause more issues than you want. But white flag up in the air then. 1 more lap to go. Is Casabon going to have a move down into turn number 1? A little bit too far behind once again. Going to hold onto the position. And the only person who was really trying to make something happen in this leading group was Salva Talons down into the hairpin. Got a little bit too deep under braking, lost a little bit of time, but unfortunately for him, not going to be able to move up into the top 10. He's currently sitting in 11th place for MSI Esports. We continue watching this battle for 2nd and 3rd. Doesn't look as though Casabon really in the mood to try and make a late braking opportunity. Gap now out front though, Paul, as we on the last lap of the race, 5.3 seconds. So you didn't want to jinx it for Charlie Collins for sure, but I mean, at this point now, just half a lap to go. It's been a great drive for the Welshman, just a few more corners to go. I mean, it sets him up very, very nicely now for the next 3 races. Not too much pressure on the shoulders of the Welshman, I would think.
Yeah, he can't relax though. He's got to keep the intensity up here all the way through to the end of the race, because as soon as you relax, that's when you make mistakes. I mean, we saw it with the great Ayrton Senna at Monte Carlo when he was told to back off and look after the car. He ended up in the wall, and that was just that loss of concentration. So he's nearly at the end of the lap here. who's heading down the back straightaway right now. This queue of traffic, still no changes there. So Charlie Collins to the head of your field, final chicane. What a day it's been for him.
So second place in the first qualifying race from Okayama, just a few tenths of a second behind the eventual race winner Zach Campbell. But for Charlie Collins, the Welshman, it is going to be the victory here from the circuit. Gilles Villeneuve, take a look further back as well. The entire train of cars as they come across the line. A photo finish almost between Walters and Thompson, but Thompson going to not get the position. 7th place overall, but for the Welshman, Charlie Collins, victory and celebrations as Collins moves up to the top of the standings in our qualifying standings for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup.
Brilliant performance. Absolutely sensational for Charlie Collins and SimRC.de. They'll be delighted with that result, and I've seen that team come up through the years, and yeah, definitely really good. Some interesting people have just been leaving the session, by the way, who've been spectating. So Joshua Rogers has been watching that one. I hope he's checking out the competition for next year, I think.
Not just checking out the competition, I'm sure, Paul. I'm sure trying to help his teammate as Piatella tries to qualify in for next season as well. But Charlie Collins, SimRC.de, that RaceSpot logo on the car probably helps just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit more aerodynamic and a bit more power as they punch their way down the straights.
It's a guaranteed 0.2 of a second a lap. You know, it is guaranteed. That is a fact. But in all seriousness, though, he did what he needed to do. He started from the front, held his nerve whilst under a bit of pressure, and then was able to just pull away. And as soon as he broke that slipstream, that was it. Done. Away.
Well, for the number 4 car, like we say, top of the standings once they get updated. We'll wait, by the way, for some post-race interviews. Hopefully we'll get some of these competitors in the booth with us to talk about the 17 laps that we just witnessed from the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve. But let's take a look then at the final race results. So Charlie Collins for SimRC.de cruises to the victory here at the circuit, Gilles Villeneuve. Pekka Toivonen holds on to second place for Kova Esports, 5.7 seconds behind eventual race winner, with Thibaut Casabon getting the final podium positions for R8G Esports. Moreno Surica for Williams Esports comes in 4th with his teammate in 7th. A good run then for some of the Williams driver. Kova also getting a few drivers on the edge of the top 10. You've got Tumas Tatila in 5th. You've got the teammate right on the edge of the top 10 as well. You then look at the rest of your field. Alexander Walters, Carlos Fenalosa, Jack Sedgwick trying to re-qualify up into the series as well. And Sal Vitalin's coming in 10th position. 11th place, Luis Tavares from Brazil, 9 seconds behind eventual race winner Danny Elgarbe. We saw him getting having to jink and avoid some issues coming through the champion chicane. But for MSI Esports, 12.4 seconds behind. Matti Kaidasoa, Brian Lockwood, Alexander Thebe, 3 drivers trying to work their way back in to the top level of sim racing. 16th place, Carlos Dieguez. Mikel Gard, who had some impressive runnings in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, comes home in 17th. Marty Piatella, 18th place, with Lasse Back and Maxime Reimstein on the edge of the top 20. Final 10 drivers then, and for Alexander Biko and Alexander Lortzien, bit of a boring race, running a lot of the time by themselves. For Zach Campbell, the Apex Racing team, winner of race number 1, disaster through turn number 2 for the first time, drops into the rear end of the field. He'll need some impressive performances in the next 3 races to work his way back up the standings. Oscar Bixgrid, Phil Dennis, Samuel Libert, Andre Martins, Matti Sipola, Eduardo Borga, and Daniel Lafuente going to be the rest of the grid. And Paul, you know, I'm looking at Phil Dennis right there. We saw him have some fairly good pace, but you know, this is the Porsche Pro qualifying series, and sometimes you just get caught up in incidents that aren't even your own fault. And for the Vendeville driver, not going to be too happy with that result, especially given how race number 1 went for him as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw him try and make the move, trying to take advantage of Brian Lockwood's little incident at the chicane with the slowdown penalty, and just getting it all wrong and going off into the runoff of turn 1 across the inside of turn 2, having a slowdown penalty of his own, and that really significantly affected his chances here today. But I think the big big drama at the start of the race with La Fuente, also with Zach Campbell as well. He'll be gutted about that, will Zach? Not being able to take that advantage, that momentum from the first race into this one. But certainly there's still more chances. There's 3 more chances, 3 more races. But he'll need some really good results for those final 3.
Let's take a look then quickly at the schedule. We say hello to you once again, by the way, from the RaceSpot TV booth. Interesting race there. I would say a lot of drivers just thinking more about their hopes for next season, Paul. You look at Casabon, for example, not really trying to push the issue too much down into the last corner with Toivonen. Toivonen, I think, got fairly lucky there. 6 seconds behind the eventual race leader. It's not that he didn't have pace. I just think the chasing pack behind him had even more pace. And I think if they had managed to clear the number 15 car, Collins might have had a bit more of a challenge to put up with.
To be honest, as soon as he lost the slipstream, he was always going to be the slowest car in that train. Being at the head of that field, he was just creating the hole and he was dragging all of those cars along with him. So there were always, whoever was going to be at the head of that field, I felt was going to be the one just causing the hold up there. And as soon as he lost that draft, he realised he needed to go a little bit more defensive with his driving. He saw it with his lap times dropping off, and that just held up everybody because nobody wanted to take any chances there in that queue of traffic. And we see some of these pictures then from the start. Zach Campbell, absolute nightmare. They were going 3 wide in front, and then just that little contact from the inside, the 26, and before you know it, Carlos Fenalosa causing that one, and Alessandro Bico, who actually finished ahead of Zach Campbell in the end, into the wall with him. But it was the Daniel Lafuente as well, who was trying to give space to that particular instant. But then look at this then. It's the cars in front that get together. The Curva car, a little bit of contact there, carrying too much speed into there because he's had to get off the brakes, losing control, and there's nothing that Eduardo could do right there.
Yeah, that was a big shame, and Cipolla just maybe cutting a bit too aggressively on the nose of Lasse back there, and you can see the car stranded in the middle of the track. More incidents that happened. Take a look then at Samuel Libert and Core Sim Racing. On the outside, into turn number 1, not always the wisest place to be, and you'll see, unfortunately for him, makes contact with one of the young Even Esport drivers from Norway, and sent out into the wall there on the outside. And, I said it during the race as well. We'll take another look at this one, Paul. If you're on the outside down into turn number 1, you often want to back out there because, like I say, it does become the inside for turn number 2, but you're just always going to lose out compared to the 2 cars on the inside as they sweep around the left-hand portion of the corner.
I mean, discretion is the better part of valor. Now, he will turn around and say, well, actually, I was ahead of that middle car, so the middle car should have backed out. But the problem for them is all the cars that are behind them as well. It really is tough to work, and there's not a lot of room there, and just the slightest of touches sends the car off to the right, exit stage right to Samuel Lebert then. And I know the guys down at Core Sim Racing won't be happy about that. But unfortunately, that's the nature of the racing here when it's so close in this race. And then this one here, Dennis, I don't know what to... He's a bit ambitious, I think, going into this corner, trying to take advantage of Brian Lockwood's mistake, and he makes the mistake all on his own.
Yeah, I think Lockwood did a good job of getting back up to racing speed, trying to not lose that extra position to Dennis. Dennis just trying to swing around the outside with all the momentum. Unfortunately, not going to work out for him in that scenario, but lots of action. Not too many passes, I would say, at the front of your field. There was a lot of scrapping further back, and it's an interesting proposition, I think, for some of these drivers as they think about now, Paul, the next few rounds of this qualifying series. We head to Sebring next time out. That might prove to have a bit more excitement in terms of the racing action. A few more opportunities for drivers to make mistakes and other drivers to try and capitalize on it. But you look there, Sebring, Spa-Francorchamps. We're going to finish it off at Interlagos. Some exciting races still to come. Should be a fun way to work our way towards the 2021 edition of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup.
Certainly. The bumps at Sebring, see at the Sunset Bend, last corner of the last lap, it always produces some great action if there's cars involved. And the second half of this championship, you'll see a bit more desperation from some of those drivers, a bit more daring moves being made. So you want to stick around for the rest of this championship, because there will be some crazy overtakes, or at least crazy overtake attempts, should I say.
Absolutely. And you know, Paul, you are one of the voices of the Super Cup, like we say. A lot of this racing is very familiar to what we see in the real Super Cup. You know, a lot of action further back in your field. In the Super Cup, they're trying to avoid making their way down into this qualifying series. But in this case, all of these drivers at the back know they can't afford to be, you know, any further below 20th position that they can possibly do. We saw a lot of aggressive passes in that little, you know, 15th to 30th kind of zone.
Yeah, certainly did, and that's where the little bit more of a, right, I need to start making my way forward. I mean, we saw it with Brian Lockwood down the back straight, the way that he darted out and was forcefully through there. Unfortunately for him, he did then end up just dropping back a couple of places from that slowdown penalty that he got. But you see it with these drivers that have been in there. They know they need to take the chances, and they need to make them count, because you don't get many chances at this level. I mean, the strength of field of this race, the average strength of field iRacing wise, was 7,630. That is just simply incredible, the level of competition here.
Yeah, competition level outstanding, and it's all setting ourselves up for what I think is going to be one of the most entertaining seasons of the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Lockwood said it coming out of round number 1. There was just 6 of those relegated drivers in the top 20. So new faces, and we think about some names like Peter Berryman that you mentioned during the pre-show. He didn't even make it into the Super Session today, Paul. A driver like Berryman, who we've seen in the first edition of the Super Cup, looking to be in a bit of a pickle as we work our way through the qualifying series now.
Yeah, not making it into the Super Session, if I put my teeth back in, it certainly won't help him missing out on this one. I know he was having a few sort of issues with his rig, which he was able to fix. He did take part in the final last chance race to qualify for this one. Unfortunately, didn't get himself into that top 30 for this week. So he's got next week and 2 more weeks after that. But time is running out, and for those drivers, they've got to take every opportunity that they can.
So we'll be back with you then in 1 week's time from the Sebring International Raceway for the third of 5 Super Sessions, as we work to determine 20 drivers who will get a World Championship license and the opportunity to fight for their share of $200,000. Thank you for joining us then for RaceSpot TV's coverage of the second round of the qualifying series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. I've been joined by the one and only Paul Smith for this one. As always, TV cameras provided to us by TrackCams22 and Istvan Ballo. Additional car cameras provided to us by Tyler Maxon. Live timing provided to us by our partners over at timing71.org. But for now, we'll see you in 1 week's time from Sebring. We hope to see you there as we look to determine the grid for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon.